Welcome once again to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano. We are your co hosts with 90 years of experience working in Colorado sports. Myself with the Denver Broncos, and Dave with the CU Buffaloes. And both of us at one time with the Denver Bears, among our many other experiences.
We are continuing our reveal of 150 significant moments in Colorado sports history. The state's 150th birthday is fast approaching, August 1st, the date in 1876 that Colorado was admitted as the 38th state in the Union. A veteran committee ranked the top 50 of those moments, all called from over 2,000 that have been collected, and we're still counting. Those are ranked by 19 people with over 1,800 years combined covering and or working in Colorado sports. We have been counting down at a rate of 5 per week, and we will do daily for the top 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered numbers 31 through 150 in our previous podcasts, and we're now into those top 50 moments that were debated and then actually ranked by the committee. We are revealing 26 through 30 in this podcast. For the first 100, we wanted to cover all areas of the state and most, if not all, sports, but all were still very significant moments. All are archived on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with all our podcasts. Just go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, and then Top 150 Moments or Podcasts.
But first, we always revisit some other moments in Colorado history that aren't in those 150. Those moments are identified chronologically, signifying their importance at the time and that had significant impact on the state sports scene. For example,
on June 27th, 1994, the first win on the LPGA Tour by a Colorado native, as Missy McGeorge won the Ping Cellular 1 championship in Portland, Oregon by 3 strokes. The Pueblo-born McGeorge, who attended high school in Texas and played collegiately at SMU, had 9 under par scorecard of 72, 69, 66, 207 to defeat Betsy King by 3 strokes.
We are going to go back to June 26th, 1866. In an exhibition game in Denver, the Colorado Baseball Club played 9 players selected to represent the territory. Colorado was still 10 years away from statehood. Each team scored all but 1 inning, but the Colorado team used a 13-run third to take a 17-7 lead, and the Territorial 9, as they were called, never got any closer than 4 runs after that point in losing 27-22. The Rocky Mountain News story made a point to mention that 2 large tents had been erected for the accommodation of spectators and players, and a barrel of good ice water was provided.
You can't get along without that good ice water. On June 23rd, 1957, Ryan Duran pitched a no-hitter in the first game of a doubleheader in a 3-0 win over Louisville at Bears Stadium, the first no-hitter in the 9-year history of the stadium. The future New York Yankee great struck out 6 and walked 2, otherwise retiring all 21 other batters he faced in the 7-inning affair. It was the 5th no-hitter in Denver Bears history, and worth note, I think, is Ryan Duran had just been called up from Double-A, so nobody had seen him yet, and nobody had seen his legendary fastball, and maybe that was a little advantage for him.
And since I'm into the 19th century here, let's go back to May 1898. Town and Gown Golf Club opened in Colorado Springs. To this day, one of the oldest continuously operated 18-hole public golf courses west of the Mississippi. It's the 3rd oldest overall. The course was purchased by William Jewett in 1910 and renamed the Colorado Springs Golf Club. On June 25th, 1919, it was renamed in honor of his wife, Patty Jewett, after he deeded the property to the city for $1.
This is Mark Johnson, voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. As we count down the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, it's worth remembering that great sports moments don't just happen. They're built on preparation, resilience, and staying healthy. And in Colorado, a great sports moment can mean something different to everyone, from Hall of Fame athletes to anyone who simply wants to keep moving. Whether you're chasing championships, personal bests, or just a pain-free morning run, the team at CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center delivers exceptional sports medicine care, from prevention and recovery to performance. Founded right here in Boulder, the CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center brings together CU medicine providers and Boulder community health clinicians to provide comprehensive care that's close to home and rooted in the community they serve. Learn more at cusportsmedicincenter.com.
And now, on with the countdown.
The greatest moments in state of Colorado sports history. Number 30.
On June 16th, 1974, 30 years ago, actually, that's 52 years ago today, a final round 3 over par propelled former CU golfer and quarterback/cornerback Hale Irwin to victory in the 83rd U.S. Open. The 29-year-old was consistent over the 4 rounds, shooting 73, 70, 71, 73 for 287, 7 over par on the tough Wingfoot Golf Club course in Mamaroneck, New York. He won by 2 strokes over Fuzzy Fessler, with notables Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player further down the line. He cashed a $35,000 check for his efforts, the first of his 3 U.S. Open wins, along in 1979 and 1990. He remains one of just 6 players in history to win 3 or more U.S. Open titles.
The greatest moments in state of Colorado sports history. Number 29.
On November 13th, 1997, the Colorado Rockies had their first, and to date only, player selected as the National League's most valuable player. Larry Walker led the league in home runs with 49, batted .366 with 130 runs batted in, along with 33 stolen bases. The right fielder also won the Gold Glove Award. The Rockies scored 923 runs, 5.7 per game, the most in the league, and second only to Seattle's 925 in the American, as Walker and his Blake Street Bomber buddies belted 239 home runs in all.
The greatest moments in state of Colorado sports history. Number 28.
On May 7th, 1994, no 8th seed had yet defeated a number 1 seed in the NBA playoffs until this day. That's when the Denver Nuggets, who had fallen behind 2-0 in the best-of-5 series, rallied to win both games in Denver to tie the series and force a Game 5 back in Seattle. Close throughout, the Nuggets prevailed 98-94 in overtime, eliminating the 63-win Supersonics. This was the game with the iconic video of Dikembe Mutombo lying on his back in the free throw lane, holding the ball above his head. The Nuggets then fell behind 3-0 against Utah and almost pulled it off again, tying the series after winning 3 in a row, but their luck ran out and the Jazz won Game 7 in the Western Conference semifinals in Salt Lake City.
The greatest moments in state of Colorado sports history. Number 27.
On December 4th, 1999, less than 8 months after tragedy struck Columbine High School on April 20th, where 20 students and a teacher were killed in the worst school shooting in state history, the Rebels defeated Cherry Creek on the Bruins home field 21-14 to win the state's 5A football championship. Creek took an early 14-0 lead in the first quarter, but was shut out the rest of the way, with Columbine tying the game in the second and going ahead 2 plays into the fourth. The game was played with an overflow crowd of 8,000 plus, with local and national media covering the televised event to witness the Rebels win and finish with a 13-1 record.
The greatest moments in state of Colorado sports history. Number 26.
This is December 10th, 1994. At 1.8 games into the season, it could be argued that the University of Colorado had three Heisman Trophy candidates: Rashawn Salaam, Cordell Stewart, and Michael Westbrook. They separated themselves late in the season, and the nod went to Salaam, who became the first Heisman winner in the state of Colorado, second in the Mountain Time Zone, by the way. He won the voting easily with 400 first-place votes, almost doubling the point total over a pair of Penn State players, Kajana Carter and Gary Collins. And if you added their votes together, they still didn't equal Rashawn's. Now, at this time, we'd like to welcome our guest for this podcast, three-time U.S. Open champion and Colorado Buffalo alum, Hale Irwin, to our podcast. Thank you for joining us, Hale.
You're welcome. It's good to hear what's going on in the state of Colorado. I was enjoying those not playbacks, but reminders of the history of Colorado, and it's fun. I have enjoyed that. Yes.
Speaking of reminders, I'm going to play the tape of the interview you had with Keith Jackson after you won the first U.S. Open. So let's listen into that interview.
We're down here on the 72nd hole. On my left, Forrest Fessler, the man who almost did it today, and Hale Irwin, the man who did do it today. A couple of young men, 24 years of age for Mr. Fessler and 29 years of age for Mr. Irwin, who realized a dream, I guess, Hale.
That's exactly right, Keith. I haven't told anyone but my wife. About 3 weeks ago, I had a dream. I won the U.S. Open, and it's just a dream come true.
There was a fire burning in the eyes last night when you went home because you were very positive in our conversation late yesterday afternoon.
Well, I was trying to be as positive as I could. I felt good about today. I felt like it was a day go out and try and eliminate the mistakes and let the other guy make them. And everyone made them today. I made a lot, but it's just that type of golf course. You just can't get away with no mistakes.
I have a feeling that when you saved par on 7 coming out of the bunker today and then knocked in a tough putt, that might have turned things around for you.
7 was a good hole. It looked like I was going to make a bogey, and I made a good 12 or 15 foot putt for par. And as good as I felt the one, then I missed that little 5 or 6 footer at 8. But actually, the putt at 9, that long one about 40 feet that went in. That to me was a very, very big putt.
You now will become one of the pursued rather than a pursuer in the legends of golf because your name goes alongside some of the greatest names in the history of it.
That pleases me to no end. I'm just as happy as I can be, Keith.
Our congratulations to you. I'm sure you'll be a great U.S. Open champion.
Well, I'll certainly try. The men that have won the U.S. Open crown before me have all been extremely good players and very fine gentlemen. I only hope I can duplicate that.
I'm sure you will. And Forrest?
So when was the last time you might have heard that, Hale?
1974. Well, it certainly brings back a lot of memories, and just Keith Jackson and the aura Keith had on the broadcast booth, and his presence always added a great deal of credibility. But I think just thinking back to not just that interview, but the entire week and how it all evolved, and the dream, that's not a story that was true as dreams can be. And it was a very, very fulfilling and fascinating, exciting time. It was my 3rd win as a professional. I had won 2 other tournaments prior to that, so I did have some winning experience, but nothing like a U.S. Open. But, it's been one of those things, other than just the literal dream, but it's been a hope of mine since I was a young kid to play in a U.S. Open and hopefully go on to victory. That was what I do when I was in Boulder, and I'd practice. I'd think to myself, this is the shot or this is the putt to win a U.S. Open. People say, well, why a U.S. Open? Well, as an amateur, the only tournament in which you can really play, if qualify, is the U.S. Open. I couldn't get in the PGA. Obviously, that's for the professionals. The British Open, I didn't even know what continent that was on. And the Masters was altogether different. So, as a young person growing up and developing my golf game along with the other sports that I played, that was the real dream come true. That that brought all those practice sessions, all those thoughts, all those wannabes came to fruition that week.
So we're going to go back in time here a little bit. It's not exactly this is your life, but kind of close. So you were born in St. Louis before your family moved to Colorado and excelled in at least two sports in Boulder High School, football and golf. Maybe there was a third, I don't know. But you elected to go to CU, which was just a hop, skip, and a jump away from BHS. Were you recruited for football, allowed to play golf, or were you recruited for golf and allowed to play football?
Well, just excuse me, a gentle reminder. I was born in Joplin, Missouri, not St. Louis. We lived in St. My wife is from St. Louis, but anyways, small detail. It doesn't matter. I was recruited to play football. Honestly, my golf game, while it was growing in stature, and I didn't know where I was going. There wasn't any school that was recruiting me for golf. Did I want to play golf? Well, certainly, but when you have the university coming to the home and they're throwing out a full scholarship for you, I think the first person that handed me the pen to sign it was my dad. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed football. I enjoyed the sport. I enjoyed being with the other young men that were aspiring to put CU on the map even more than it already was. All the things you want to do as a 17 or 18-year-old kid, I aspired to do that too. But as I got older, as each year evolved, my golf got a little bit better. I didn't get to play in a lot of tournaments outside the state and really put my talents up against the other younger people in the country. Playing against the professionals wasn't even a consideration because I was fortunate enough to have a few tournaments under my belt playing against some of the other young people, the Bob Dixons who went on to win a British Amateur and a U.S. Amateur, and the Bob Murphys and Marty Fleckmans and the people like that. The people that are listening now may not know them, but they were the top of the heap. And I got the occasional victory on those few tournaments in which I got to play. But I worked in the summer primarily as a laborer for my dad and my uncle, so I didn't get a lot of tournament experience. Winning the NCAA my senior year was probably the catalyst because I felt like I was playing against at least some of those people that I've already mentioned. And I won a national tournament at the collegiate level. Now, how do you take that and go forward with it? Well, I was going to find out. And I made the big step in January of 1968 to declare my professional intent and went to the PGA qualifying school in April of that year. Then the tour was run by the PGA of America, and then the PGA Tour evolved from that later on. So anyway, just a quick snapshot of how golf started. But did I want to play golf in college? Sure. After I got kind of beat up and rolled on and kicked around as a sophomore and hurt my shoulder, missed the last two games of the football season, I thought, well, maybe golf is where I should go. But with some serious thought, I thought my dad had always said, don't start something you can't finish. And while I did enjoy football, again, there was no one school, no one golf coach or anybody out there calling me or looking me up or sending me letters to say, how would you like to come and play golf? So I was giving up a full ride scholarship. I would have had to sit out an eligibility year. I would have had to leave home, and I enjoyed home. I enjoyed being close to my family and my friends. So there are a lot of things that didn't kind of come together. So with all that in mind, I decided to stick it out and finish something that I had started. And the next football year was a better year, much better for me. I no longer was the quarterback and just have people running after you. I was now the weak side safety and running after people. So the job description was a little different as far as football goes, but my golf kept inching itself toward a better measure of success.
Hale, had you considered any place besides CU?
No, not really. I kind of thought as a senior in high school, if I was going to play football and get myself run over and torn apart, if I was up there in Boulder instead of somewhere else.
Sure.
I have a shoulder to cry on then, but no, I felt like CU was a place I wanted to play ball.
Now, as a two-sport star athlete, you had to have quite a few people who were very influential in your life, football and golf. Who immediately comes to mind?
Oh my goodness, there are just so many people. Certainly, all my teammates that I had in football, just every one of them had a huge influence. Because, as you know, when you play a team sport, if you're not part of that team, if you're not an integral part of the functioning of that defense or that offense, you're going to break down. And we had a very, very good defense. I would have thrown it up against just about any team in the country when we were juniors and seniors. On the golf side, excuse me, I think Larry McAtee was an influence. Simply, and Larry just recently passed away, but I think Larry was one of those guys that was driven to succeed and won 4 state stroke play tournaments. And Larry was a friend and teammate, and we traveled together to play in a couple tournaments. I think Les Fowler, who was a very good amateur player in the state of Colorado, he was the golf team administrator. We didn't have really coach. If we went played an away match, Les would give me the golf balls to give to the guys, and we'd go off on our own to the tournaments. It was a little different then, but certainly my parents, all the people that you play against in golf, you learn something from them, and they become friends. For instance, Tad Columbus in Denver played against Tad and his brother Gary quite often in golf. Well, Ted was my roommate and teammate in football. So it's hard to pick out just one person. But with all the support that you get, even if it's direct or indirect, you can't say, well, I could have done that myself. No, you can't. All those people contributed a great deal, even though it may not seem like it. From where I sit right now, yes, it was a great deal.
I've heard some crazy Les Fowler stories through the years. Like in 1961, he decided not to bring the team to, I believe, Ohio for NCAAs, and forgot to tell one kid on the team who was in Pennsylvania. He showed up without the buffs there, and the NCAA still let him play.
Yeah, well, Les had a business. He was also one of our state in the state political system, so he was a busy man, but one of the nicest guys. There was a time at Boulder Country Club where they were having the qualifying for the club championship, and he said, "Are you going to play?" And I said, "No." He said, "Come on, we're going to qualify right now." And he threw me in a cart. We went out and played 18 holes so I could post a score for the club championship. I didn't know what I was doing, but I shot a very low score, and Les was the guy that got me out there to ultimately become the club champion. So, I owe a lot to Les Fowler, and God bless him. He was a very nice man to me.
In 1963, freshmen were not allowed to compete back then in either sport. I presume a lot of football practices and amateur events around the state. How tough was it for you waiting for that sophomore year, knowing how good you were?
As you say, freshmen weren't allowed to play varsity sports. But spring football was something that no one really enjoyed, but you had to do it as a freshman. So the fall, as a freshman, and you swing through winter, now you get into spring, and now you got to do football again. You kind of wonder, what am I doing here? And then, now the school season's over, but now the work season is in front of you. So I didn't get a lot of golf in at that period of time, but that's okay because it makes you want it more when it is available. So, now we get into sophomore year, yes, you play the fall season, but now you get into the spring season, and those people that could make a varsity sport were excused from spring football. So it was interesting to see some of the big guys maybe trying to make the track team, or somebody didn't know how to play baseball, trying to play on the baseball team just to get on spring football. Entertaining it was.
You had mentioned Larry McAtee. In researching the sport, the state back then, it appears you two led a revolution for younger players. I mean, you won the state stroke play by 15 strokes. Who does that? You must look back at that time in your life with fond memories.
Absolutely. It was probably at the real origin of my initial success. We moved out here from a small town, the extreme corner of southeast Kansas. I'm out here, I'm thinking in Colorado. Moved out to Boulder when I was 14 years old, and settled in Boulder. And baseball was a big sport then, and I immediately got on a baseball team, and I enjoyed playing baseball, but it just, something had to give as I got older. I was driving a car now. I had a social life. I guess that meant a girlfriend. I was playing baseball. I was trying to play golf some. I was working 8 hours a day. Something just had to give. So baseball disappeared. But that's not to say it left my life. It was just something I just didn't have time to do. But it did, as I look back, it did make me focus a little bit more on my golf. But my mom and dad entered me in a junior tournament, JC tournament. We just moved to Boulder. And interestingly enough, I didn't know they had, but they told me, and I thought, well, this will be interesting. I think it's a 2-day affair, and I won it. And then the top 4 finishers there got to go to the state JC tournament. The top 4 finishers there got to go to the national. Well, I finished 3rd in the state. So next thing you know, we're off to Portsmouth, Virginia, to play in a national tournament, and it's something that I had never done in my life, and I even thought about it. And immediately went to a club there, a very nice place called Elizabeth Manor Country Club. And the first round I shot 79, and the next round I shot 90. Obviously I missed the cut, but I learned so much. It was such a whirlwind of activity and opening my eyes to what's out there that was probably the real seed that got planted. And my enthusiasm for golf was that the summer when I was 14.
Your sophomore season on the football team was the last of the platoon era. You'd been playing quarterback and cornerback. You were behind Bernie McCall at QB, but managed to rush for 100 yards and a touchdown. Do you remember who that was against, the TD?
Oklahoma State.
Good call. Good memory.
In Stillwater.
Hey, we thought we'd throw that one at you to test your memory.
Well, it was interesting because you're playing both ways, and you could, in the substitution rules then, you could only substitute 2 players per play. You couldn't put your entire offensive team or defensive team out on a change of possession. So you had to work 2 in, 2 out, 2 in, 2 out, 2, and then you have to change possession. So you reverse the process. So, I was starting at quarterback when we opened our first game at USC out at the Coliseum. And the gentleman playing my position on defense broke his wrist. So I stayed in all the time. Then Bernie and I started rotating, but I pretty much stayed on defense from there on until I graduated, which was fine. I liked keeping the action in front of me. Like I told my coach, Eddie Crowder, I said, Coach, no one gets behind me, not even the goalposts.
Mm-hmm.
So I played it pretty deep back there, but I think I had an ability to kind of sense where the point of attack was going. And like I said, there were some great teammates that I had that really supported not only my position, but I think I theirs, and we worked together very nicely. But it was an interesting time because when you're doing both ways, you have to learn a lot of things. And as a quarterback, you got to know more than what you think you know. And defensively, I was probably more instinctively better at reacting than I was creating. So it was fine though.
You just answered my next question, because when 65 rolled around and players were ID'd for offense or defense, you selected defense, correct? Your choice?
Well, I didn't select it. I think Coach Crowder selected it for me. But that was fine. I just felt like my natural instincts were better on defense. My offensive prowess, well, I think it was okay. I think just looking at it from kind of a self-analysis, I was better suited, better instinctively playing defense than I was playing offense. And I think that's probably what Coach Crowder saw, and which was fine by me. Just playing and being on, again, I'll say it again, some of the best players you could possibly have. You know, Sam Harris, All-American, went to play for the Saints. Yeah, just name it. Dick Anderson, All-Pro, Miami Dolphins. So some really good players.
You were a big part of it. You twice earned all Big 8 honors at cornerback with 8 interceptions and 112 tackles over those 2 seasons, teaming with College Hall of Famer Dick Anderson in the defensive backfield for 2 seasons, and you helped CU return to its winning ways, winning 13, losing 5, and tying 2 in those 2 years. Any fond memories of playing with Dick and reversing the fortunes of the football team?
Well, of course, you know, Dick and I, we went, I was a year older than Dick. So when I was in Casey Junior High School, I was 9th grade, Dick was 8th grade. So we kind of leapfrogged right up through high school and into college. And then that reversed because his brother Bobby was a year older than my brother Phil, and they did the same thing. They leapfrogged up. So I think the Irwin-Anderson connection had been there a long time. But Dick really came about. He was always a good athlete, but I think he was the strong side safety. I was the weak side safety. And we ham and egged that very nicely. And I think when Dick became a senior, he kind of took the reins of the defensive backs and kind of helped them be more cohesive. And I think it really came together when he got into the pros. He got with some professional coaching, got with some people that really brought out the best in Dick Anderson. And you take his performance and you can match it up just about anybody in the league at that time. And he was truly an all-pro.
Turning to college golf now. You shared the Big 8 title with OSU's Greer Jones as a junior, won it outright as a senior. Just one of 8 players in the 90 years of the conference to win it twice. Bobby Kalinowski also doing it for CU in the 90s. What did it mean to you at the time and now?
Any win at any level is great. The win where Greer and I tied, that was at, again, I believe that was, could have been Oklahoma State. I think it was Oklahoma. We were, I think, in Norman, but we had a rain out. So the last round was rained out. So Greer and I were declared co-winners. He too went on, I think, tried to play professionally. And the step from being an amateur to a pro is not easy. I mean, you can do it on paper, but to really get out there and do it is it's another creature altogether. You know, some are made out for other things. But the fact that having won in the conference and being just distinguishing yourself doesn't really do anything, I don't think, to the outside world, but it's the inside world. What it does to you internally is to give you the confidence to keep pushing going forward. And it certainly did that for me.
So now we're going to head east to Shawnee on the Delaware. You qualified for the NCAAs as a senior and were essentially in a battle for 3 rounds with Florida's Steve Milnick. You trailed him by 1 shot after 18, by 2 shots after 36. Then you decided to make some history. You scored 9 birdies that measured 94 feet in total Got that from a newspaper article. And an eagle, which is a hole-in-one on the 220-yard par 3 14th hole, enriched an NCAA record 65, which stood for years. Now you're 5 up on Melnick. What do you recall about that day, and what club in 1967 equipment did you ace a 220-yard par 3 with?
Well, let me put it this way. That round could be the most bizarre round of golf I have ever played in my life. As you mentioned, there were 9 birdies and there was a hole-in-one. So, that right there is 11 under par. So how did you get to only 7 under? Well, I made 4 bogeys and only 4 pars that day. So I ran the gamut. But we played the tee a little bit more forward than 223 yards because I hit a 5-iron. And a 5-iron was probably around a 180-yard club for me. So it was, like I say, one of the more bizarre, intriguing, interesting, exciting rounds of golf I've ever had, which now going into Sunday, the last round, it's very difficult. And I've seen it time and time again. I've done it, but seen others do it. When you have a really good round, going out the next day with that same mojo is really tough. So I didn't play particularly well on Sunday, but nor did anyone else. But I found out what true pressure was like on a golf course. And I think that really and truly helped me out in the long run.
That's a hard thing to do. You shot a 79 in the final round and hung on 2 clay medalist honors over 3 others. The course conditions could have been great. The average score in the final round was just a shade under 76. What do you remember about that round of the course? Only 10 rounds in the 60s over the 4 days. And I'll tell you, as you said, it is tough, really tough, to follow greatness with a good performance the next day.
Well, I do remember the course being very difficult. We had some wind, and now the NCAA or the people setting up the golf course wanted to max it out to its extreme toughness, and they did. And I think, as you say, the scoring was very high, and you have to. And as I mentioned, when you have a good round and you have to come out the next day, it is so hard to get yourself back in that groove. It's the stoppage of the adrenaline. It's stopping and sleeping and eating and all that stuff you have going one day kind of oozes down and it finds another level. So the next day you go to that well and start to pump and it's not working quite as well. Well, how did it work the day before? Boy, if you knew things like that, I'd write books and be wealthy. But it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
I think anybody that goes out and succeeds one day and they try to come back the next day with that same measure or level of success, you may get it, but it's going to take something different than you had the day before. So for all of us, I think you're looking at the final round on a very difficult course. And for me, leading a tournament of that magnitude, having come off of the round I did the day before, really tested me. And, to finish it, at least breaking 80, that's all I can say. I broke 80. But I came away with the crown, and that's all I wanted.
That's a big deal.
Now to the moment our committee
Absolutely.
number 30 in state sports history. You conquered Wingfoot in Mamaroneck, New York to win your first of 3 U.S. Opens. And I actually know Wingfoot pretty well. It's 5 miles from my high school in New York, and we used to play Mamaroneck High School in our 9-hole matches there, which was a privilege. Never saw the back 9 because it was the front 9. But you opened with a 73. You're just 3 back and tied for 9th. You then card a 70 and find yourself in a 4-way tie with some of the biggest legendary names in golf, Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Raymond Floyd. You had to either be nervous, excited, or both. And who were you paired with on moving day after that foursome tied for the lead?
I don't know. You tell me. I know who I was paired with the final day, but I remember thinking, just to set the stage, Wingfoot in 1974, as we know is dubbed the Massacre at Wingfoot, was the single hardest golf course that I have ever played in my career where weather wasn't a factor. The rough was extremely deep, extremely tough. For then, it was a very long course. the greens were very firm and quite fast, much like today's are. But back then, you didn't have them quite the way they are groomed today. But they went way out there and on the difficult meter. But like I say, it's the hardest golf course I've ever played where weather wasn't an issue. So my thinking was, regardless with whom I'm playing, I've really got to play this golf course. You can't be enamored by the players and the Palmers and the Floyds and all those great players. You better think about this golf course in front of you, bigger than anybody else.
That's right. You got to play. Tom Watson rallied to take a one-shot lead over you after 3 rounds. What was your mindset going into that final round?
Well, having started, I played fairly well all week, about as well as you can play, given my attitude during the week. The whole week was the grumbling in the locker room about how difficult the course was it was thick. So I'm thinking, well, about 67% of these players have already checked out. So all you have to do is beat about 30% of them, and just understand that a par on this golf course, the way it's playing, is going to be very much like a birdie. So, accept that you're going to make some bogeys. Just don't make the double bogeys, because there's not enough real birdie opportunities out there to make up for that double. So just play the placement game. Put the ball in the fairway as best you can. You got to stay out of the rough. I didn't care where the flag was on the green. I wanted to be under the hole. I'd take a 30-foot uphill putt over a 10-foot downhill putt every time, just because the greens were that difficult. So I played positional golf. I didn't really care if the pin was on 33 feet, if it was in the back right. I was aiming for the underneath the hole. I just wanted to put the ball in the middle of the green just about every time. At least that way I could save myself. So it wasn't necessarily defensive golf. It was what I want to call was smart golf. You just had to watch what you were doing and not make that critical mistake. And we've seen that through time and time again, coming down the stretch, that mistake made at the wrong time, or the double bogey, or the missed short par putt, something that kind of turns the tide. Well, that's what you couldn't do at Winged Foot. It was, so my attitude was really pretty self-contained in that it mattered little with whom I played. They were going to have their own problems, just as we all were. But I had to contain myself and just say, okay, the most important shot is this shot right now. Not the one you just played, not the one coming, but this one right now. And I kind of stayed on that mindset the whole week.
Yeah, and only you can make it.
So you finished with a 73. That actually tied for the 10th best score in the final round. And I calculated the average score ballooned to just under 79 that Sunday. At what point did you feel confident, hey, I could or I might win this thing?
After I tapped it in from the last hole. Interestingly, they didn't have scoreboards everywhere then. So you kind of, you might go 3 or 4 holes before you saw a scoreboard. So you didn't really know what everybody else was doing. You could only go with what you were doing and maybe what you sensed or heard out there, a roar, something. But I made a very nice par at 17 after driving it just in the rough and chopped it out and hit a wedge up to about 12 feet or so, and made that putt for a par at 17. And as I'm over the putt, I'm thinking, I've got to make this putt for probably at worst to stay in the lead. I mean, at best to stay in the lead, at worst to be one behind. And I didn't have any idea what everybody else was doing. So as I'm walking to the next tee, Marshall said, you have a 2-shot lead. Besler bogeyed the last hole. Well, I immediately told myself, don't trust that.
Right.
You haven't seen that. It's not official. And I just let it go right through my head and concentrated on, I just had to put the ball in the fairway at the last hole. It's a bogey if you don't, at least. So after putting it in the fairway, I felt pretty good that, okay, if I've got a 1-shot lead, I'm in good shape. If it's a 2-shot lead, I'm in really good shape. But once we got up to the fairway, to the tee shots, I could see the scoreboard, and I had a 2-iron shot into the green. I just hit it perfectly. So once I made contact with that 2-iron, I saw the fly of the ball. That's when I knew I had it. It was only then. Now I've got a 2-shot lead, and I've got about a 25-foot putt. Oh, I'm not going to 4-putt the darn thing. Although I guess you could, but I didn't.
It was only then, et cetera, et cetera. But let's talk about the psychological aspects of this. What about the dream that you only told your wife, Sally, about? What about that dream?
Well, I won't say it evolved exactly the way it played out in real life, but as I recall the dream, it was, I was playing golf, obviously, in the dream. And again, obviously it was a U.S. Open. And how I won in that dream, I can't tell you. But I do know that it planted a very positive seed. And I didn't know what the golf course looked like until we got there. I had only played Wingfoot one other time, and that was in 1967. And it was when we got there in 74, it was a far different golf course. So I really didn't know the details of it, but I didn't want to, let's say, bite myself by going out, boy, I won the U.S. Open, and now all of a sudden you don't. You think, boy, you made a fool of yourself. So I only told my wife, Sally, just said, boy, I had an interesting dream. And, and again, the details, if I remember them, I certainly don't now, but the end result was I won. And I do recall lifting the trophy in the dream, but that's all I can recall. But at the same time, it's only a dream. If you want that to be reality, you've got to go do it. But I think that gave me a very, very positive approach to a very difficult week.
If I'm remembering correctly, one of the times you spoke to the CU golf team, one of the players asked you how you celebrated. Did you go back to the hotel and order pizza? Was that what you did?
Well, 1974, my wife, we had our first child, Becky, our daughter, was born in 71. So she was home, and she was pregnant with our second child, Stephen, who, he lives up in the Denver area now. So she was home, and Dale and Joyce Douglas were in the same hotel. So would there be two finer people than Dale and Joyce Douglas? Absolutely not. So I went to their room. We ordered room service. And to tell you what we ordered, I don't know, it could have been pizza. I can't remember, but it was a very quiet, exciting time with two of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. And I just only wish my wife would have been there with the kids, but nature had other ideas. But it was a very gratifying evening, nice and quiet, and the way I wanted it. It had been a long week, a very tough week, and very very happy to be back where it was quiet with some friends.
So you went on to win the Open again in 79 and again in 90, becoming the oldest to do so in the process in the latter. And I think the famous clip from there was, here's this kind of guy to be considered a little shy, a little reverse, versus wore glasses when you first came on the tour. You make that putt, and now you're high-fiving the gallery. Is that a spur of the moment decision?
Oh, absolutely. Excuse me, there's no way you can sit there at 45 feet and say you're going to make this putt. But it really kind of started before that. On the 11th tee, I was invited by the USJ. I got an honorary invitation to play in the tournament. So I hadn't qualified in any other way. So I'm trying to have a good showing. So the USJ doesn't look bad with their choice. So I get to the 11th tee, and I'm one shot out of the top 15. The top 15 gets you in the following year. So my goal, standing on the 11th tee, was to, okay, I got to play 1 under here in. That's a goal. And it's not easy, but that's my goal. Well, again, I just kind of got retooled, got refocused. Immediately birdied 11. Thought, okay, that's top 10. I birdied 12, and I thought, oh, okay, that's top 5. And I birdied 13. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, let's keep it going. I birdied 14. So I'd kind of been almost off the lead. Yes, I was off the leaderboard. Now, 4 holes later, I'm 1 stroke back of the then lead, but the leaders now are an hour behind me. So who knows what they're going to do? So after parring 15, 16, 17, I make the big putt at 18. And as I'm watching that ball go in the hole, I'm thinking, I just birdied the last 5 holes in a U.S. Open on a very difficult golf course, and now I'm tied for the lead. And as I'm doing that little celebratory run, I have a flashback that in 1975, I had birdied the last hole to take the clubhouse lead. And I thought, this is when I was defending from 74 to 75, and Lou Graham went on to win in 75. But I thought, geez, I made a birdie at the last hole, and I've got the clubhouse lead again. Just that snapshot of the past. So anyway, all the high fiving, all that was really celebratory, and the people it was loud. It was very enthusiastic time, and I was just soaking it in.
And of course, you went on to dominate on the Champions Tour. And between the 2 tours, you won 65 times. I would presume the one special tournament of all was your first U.S. Open win?
Well, that question has come to me quite a few times, and I don't know if I can honestly and adequately answer it, because your first win as a pro is so satisfying, because, at least for me, because that's what you set out to do, is become a winner. So you can't set that aside and say, well, it's not as special as U.S. Open. What you can do is say that U.S. Open was special because it was my first. And are there 2 different categories? Well, you can say, okay, we got the majors, we got the others. But now they say, well, was your second one or your third one better than the first one? Which was your best? It's like, if you had 3 children, which one do you love the most? I can't do that. Different times, different factors, times in my life, different factors at play, just different. So they're all extremely satisfying. But I ultimately come down to what's the most victory that you had, the most pleasant, the fun. Excuse me, it was probably be my victory with my son Steve at the father-son tournament. To share that kind of an experience with a family member was just unbelievable.
And of course, Steve followed in your footsteps and played 4 years at CU, and he's had some success playing some mid-amateurs around the country as well. So I wanted to mention Steve, knowing him as well as I do, and how proud he's been of you and your career.
Well, he turned pro out of college, and I mean, he like a lot of other people, he's very qualified. He can hit a golf ball, but that's not the measure. That's not how you make it. Some people have the intestinal fortitude, have the heart. I don't know what it is, and can go on and take a career that really didn't look very good and be highly successful as a pro. And you have other people that can go out there and have a tremendous amateur record and don't make it as a pro. Well, what is that makes some people succeed and others not? I don't know. I really don't know. It's a mystery, but it's the kind of thing that, yes, you can be hungry. Yes, you can be all those things that all the coaches tell you, and this is what you need to do. You can do all those things, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Maybe it's just not part of what you're going to be as a human being. That might not be in your DNA. And then there are others that you think, and I can point out, let's take a Lee Trevino, a great player. Well, Lee comes from across the border down in El Paso. He really doesn't play a lot of golf. Who in the world is Lee Trevino? Here's a guy that hits a golf ball with a Dr. Pepper bottle. Come on, really? And he's gone on to have the success he's had. Larry Nelson didn't play golf until he was 19 years old. He was in Vietnam. He's in the Army. He's a veteran. Didn't even play. And here he's a 3-time major champion. So how do you say no? Well, you can't. Well, how do you say yes? Well, you can't. There's just some people have it and some people don't.
And I think some people think Lee Trevino. Oh, he's the guy with that cameo in Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, well, Lee is one of my favorite characters, and you learn to play with these guys. You know, Lee he likes to talk. So if you don't want to talk, you better walk on the other side of the fairway, because he's going to hit the fairways. He's good. He's probably the best ball striker I've ever seen. But he's a gift to golf. Let's put it that way.
Hale, it would be great to have you talk about one or two particularly funny stories from the tour victories, but you've already hit everything. You've been just fantastic, and we couldn't ask for anything more.
Well, it's been fun. I always, maybe at the age of 81, you get in a, I know when I turned 80, I got in a very reflective mood, and, you know, thought back to all the things that have been so important, and more importantly, the people who have helped fashion my life and success I've had. And I've been able to go to different countries and experience different cultures. And, you know, golf is a great vehicle in which to meet some of the nicest and most successful people you'll ever want to meet. It's a humbling game, and even some of the most successful and brightest, and you name it, those kinds of people fail miserably at golf. And it can bring you back down, or it can lift you up. And I've been so blessed with being able to see and touch and do and smell all the things I have through the game of golf. It's just, I'll never be able to put back into the game what it's given me.
Well, you know, when you've spoken to the team, the late Mark Simpson and Roy Edwards certainly appreciate you. The number of times you have spoken to the golfers, whether we're in a tournament in Arizona or the few times you're back in Colorado. So I know they're appreciative of what you've been able to pass along. And we appreciate the fact that you took the time to join us today. We've been doing these podcasts now since last November, and I can honestly say this is probably one of, if not the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Bobby Anderson,
well,
too.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, you know, he's got quite the history, certainly there in Boulder and with the Broncos, and he was again, like his brother, one of those really good athletes, and made it work.
Maybe we should have a GoFundMe campaign we're trying to name the stadium. How does Folsom Field at Irwin Anderson Stadium sound?
I think it sounds like a mouthful. No, I couldn't vote for that one.
Well, on that note, we want to thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, everyone, we hope you continue to enjoy our podcast and reminiscing with our trips down memory lane in Colorado sports history. Let's thank our sponsors, Pasta J's at 10th and Pearl Street in Boulder, CU Sports Medicine, occasional co-host and executive producer Tim Simmons, who writes the Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, and the voice of the Buffs, Mark Johnson, for introducing each moment's number.
That is a wrap on our 34th podcast. Tune in next week for the next reveal of the state's top 150 moments, numbers 21 through 25. And a reminder that the Hall of Fame offers tours of its museum and the stadium, as well as Empower Field at Mile High.